Everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Trudi J. Antoine, and I'm the Teen and Adult Services Librarian at the Beauchamp Branch Library at Onondaga County Public Libraries in Syracuse, New York.
Hi guys, my name is Dragana Drobnjak and I currently live in Syracuse, New York. I work as a librarian, archivist, and children's program coordinator for Syracuse University's Hispanic Cultural Center, La Casita. I received my MLIS from Rutgers University and a certificate of advanced studies in cultural heritage preservation from Syracuse University. Completed my bachelor's in art therapy from Lesley University with minors in both art and history. And professionally, I'm interested in helping develop models that provide platforms for expression and creation of knowledge. And personally, both Trudi and I have had success doing this through the arts, which is, in my opinion, a versatile tool that's used to unlock a whole wealth of information. Having grown up in a civil war in former Yugoslavia, I really realized how precious information is and how easy it can be used to sway popular opinion. Napoleon, you guys know that guy, right? He once said, "What is history but a fable agreed upon?" He would have known waging so many wars. And I'm also sure you've heard of history books are written by the winners. However, by participating in experience where we encourage the creation of knowledge and information, such as when we share our personal histories through zines or hip hop music or coding, and we're going to show you these examples later, we allow our voices to participate, and these experiences actually involve every single pillar of democracy. Feel free to argue me on that. I say all this to impress on you that librarianship actually exists in the creative design field, similar to architecture, for example. Rachel Ivy Clark is a colleague of mine at the iSchool at Syracuse University, and she has focused her research on the conceptualizing the field of librarianship as a design profession rather than a scientific one. And this is incredibly important because unless library data is presented scientifically, so presented more quantitatively than qualitatively, platforms for the sharing of this knowledge are very limited. And as librarians, we have to figure out very creative ways to solve 21st century problems in our profession. We generate programming based off of ideas culminated through our personal histories. So again, my art therapy background is at the basis of my work as a librarian, or is it the other way around? I constantly ask myself, how can I help support the light of someone's inner flame? And this is something that Trudi and I have talked about time and time again in our work. As Will Smith summed up an expression used by the Persian poet Rumi, are we helping fan the flames or are we pissing on the fire? Within a library, can we build the skills as learned through the arts and transfer them to other areas in life, socio-economically? In this presentation, Trudi and I will show you exactly how to do that. Trudi, would you mind taking it away?
Dragana. Okay, so we're going to start the presentation now, and I'll be sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Okay. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, excuse me. Jumped ahead. It's actually very sensitive, I guess. Okay, so thank you for that, Dragana. Welcome to our presentation. This is Grassroots Community Organizing for Socio-Economic Development. So, socioeconomic status, or SES. According to the American Psychological Association, socioeconomic status, or SES, is the social standing or class of an individual or group. It is often measured as a combination of education, income, and occupation. Poverty specifically is not a single factor, but rather is characterized by multiple physical and psychosocial stressors. Further, SES, socioeconomic status, is a consistent and reliable predictor of a vast array of outcomes across the lifespan, including physical and psychological health. SES factors have an important impact on the way people live and how they see themselves. Socioeconomic status determines what types of opportunities and privileges people do or do not receive, if they will enjoy living in safe communities that provide quality education, or if they will have to focus their resources on survival in an everyday struggle to obtain food, clothing, and shelter. Dragana, do you want to go into the part about Syracuse?
Yes, ma'am. So let me share my screen. Let's see, let's share just Google Chrome here. And the present button. Do, 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 do. Right? Okay, come on. Here we go. Okay, let me just move these cursors out of the way a little bit. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the city of Syracuse and how these initiatives actually came about to be. So Syracuse, New York has an incredibly vibrant history. It was a very important stop on the Underground Railroad and the birthplace of Jerry's Rescue. Well, not birthplace of Jerry's Rescue, but it is where the event took place. And resources are really needed to pay homage to these stories, to the wealth of multicultural diversity and ethnicity here in Syracuse, New York. So not only was it an openly abolitionist city, but it also provided resettlement opportunities for freed slaves after the passage of the 15th Amendment. And then something happened. Syracuse, New York, and a few other cities in the nation thought that by building giant highways through the middle of the town, they could actually resolve a lot of the economic issues and struggles. But unfortunately, it got a bad bout of white flight and the worst slum problem in America. So this is a map of Syracuse, New York that depicts gunshots. So you guys can see in the little legend there where the city's boundaries are, where the confirmed gunshots with homicides took place, and so on and so forth. Most of these places, the south side of Syracuse as well as north side of Syracuse, are areas where Trudi and I do work. And actually right now, even because of my affiliation with La Casita, which is on the west side of Syracuse, you can see north, south, and west. And that corresponds also, of course, to poverty statistics. And according to a very important study released by Rutgers University, Syracuse has the highest rate of extreme poverty concentrated among Blacks and Hispanics out of the nation's 100 largest metropolitan area. That is huge. In Syracuse, almost 2/3 live in high poverty neighborhoods where 40% or more of residents live below the federal poverty threshold. The number of high poverty census tracts more than doubled in Syracuse from 2013, from 12 to 30. So how are the students coping with this? Syracuse, in addition to having low income populations, has an also incredibly large refugee population. And they are predominantly concentrated on the north side of Syracuse. 80% of students that attend our city school district live in poverty, 8 times New York State and United States rates. It also has the highest per capita number of refugees in the state. And although the city is culturally vibrant, as I said before, it really lacks the resources and capital necessary to ensure adequate literacy initiatives. So I'm not sure if you're noticing this, but I had fairly the exact same caption on a slide up above that was talking about where the African American populations ended up following the construction of Highway 81 and following the abolitionist movement. This is also a very sad fact. Less than 40% of Syracuse City School District students and only 5% of English, so foreign English, English as a second language students are reading on grade level by 3rd and 4th grade. So that's less than half. 40% is less than 50 and 5% is tiny. So what can be done? And Trudi, I believe that at this point you're going to jump in, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm going to share now.
And I'm stopping share.
And everyone can see the screen. Just give me a nice confirmation thumbs up. Awesome. Okay. So to piggyback off of what Dragana was saying, our libraries are based in areas that have very high poverty rates. And I'm going to talk more about the libraries where the projects we'll discuss have taken place, and just give you a background on the neighborhood makeup of each library. So we'll start with Central Library Makerspace, which is downtown in Syracuse. The one library space, the makerspace, located in the OCPL Central Library, downtown Syracuse, New York, which as of this year, 2020, hosts 28,000 downtown employees, 60 retail shops, and 1,386 average rent for a 1-bedroom. However, in 2018, when the discussed projects that we're discussing, we're discussing have taken place. Oh, excuse me, my note is missing. Okay. I'm sorry, you guys.
You're all good, Trudi. Your slides, I don't see them though.
You can't see them?
No.
Okay. Hold on.
She has these beautiful pictures and images. I just really want to make sure everybody. Oh, there it goes.
Am I there? Okay.
You're there.
Thank you. So I'll get back on track. Okay. So this area has been revitalized to some extent, especially before COVID hit the area. But however, in 2017 and 2018, when a lot of the projects that we're discussing came to pass, there were 242 vacant storefront spaces in that area. The area also hosts several homeless shelters and soup kitchens, including the Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, the Rescue Mission, the Gifford Place Homeless Shelter population, these shelters are anywhere from a 6 to 7 minute walk in any direction from the Central Library. So in terms of a lot of the visitors that we do get to the library, in terms of their socioeconomic status, we're looking at people who have been recently incarcerated and are coming out. And some of the first places that they're told to go is the library. Young people who have been made homeless, people who are struggling with drug addiction, women dealing with partner abuse, and people who are suffering from debilitating illness, like epilepsy, or people who are suffering from mental disorders. This is my beautiful library, the Beauchamp Branch Library, which is only open for takeout right now because of COVID. Um, but we'll also focus on projects that happen in the Beauchamp Branch Library on the south side of Syracuse, like Dragana was talking about. The south side Syracuse neighborhood is a predominantly residential area with a mix of lower to middle income 1 and 2 family homes and multi-unit apartment buildings. Due to the construction of the I-81 freeway built during the 1950s, the historically Black and successful neighborhood called the 15 Ward was razed, R-A-Z-E-D. And this created levels of concentrated poverty among African-American residents in the city of Syracuse. The South Side became one of those resulting neighborhoods where the concentrated poverty is taking place. In 2010, the average family size was 3.5 and the median household income was $22,901. In 2017, the estimated median household income was $32,000 about, and 31.2% of residents in the Beauchamp Branch Library zip code, so in the South Side, lived below the poverty level. So as Dragana said, we're at 40% now. Violence is also a general feature of high poverty areas. In 2020 in Syracuse, New York, there were 22 gun violence victims, several of which occurred on the South Side. Here, patrons with challenging socioeconomic status are those without jobs, those experiencing poverty, single parents whose family size exceeds their gross income, at-risk teens involved in street life, homeless teens, and those who may have only one tech device in their home and use the library to apply for applications, create emails, and write resumes and more. This branch is the White Branch Library, and it is located on the north side in Syracuse. The north side is home to many refugees that have resettled in Syracuse, New York. New Americans from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Somalia, Burma, Nepal, Bhutan, Vietnam, and Eastern Europe make the neighborhood a dynamic area, according to Syracuse.com. The North Side boasts a host of resources for new Americans and families that have already made Syracuse their home. Patrons who have challenging socioeconomic status in this neighborhood have the challenges of resettling, overcoming language barriers, adjusting to a new way of life, navigating the local and state government resources, gaining employment, dealing with being targeted due to being a foreigner, homesickness, and providing for and educating their children, and also experiencing poverty, at least before they're able to get on their feet. Okay, Dragana, I'll pass it over to you now.
All righty. Let me take a look. Here, share screen. On Google Chrome. Thank you guys for your patience as we flip between the slides here. Greatly appreciated. So what can be done? Well, how about grassroots organizing? Grassroots, you guys can hear me and see the slides okay? Okay, so grassroots movements and organizations use collective action from the local level to affect change at local, regional, national, and then international, so global level. And how does that look and exist like inside of a library or inside of an organization that's working in partnership with a library organization? How about, for example, graphic journalism workshops to alleviate trauma and build storytelling skills? Let's see here. Just so everybody is aware, there is a potential trigger in these slides of war and war violence. Having experienced and gone through war myself, I have had many triggers working on this project, as you might imagine. But the results that came out of them, you know, were actually a way for these kids to process trauma and find a meaningful, more sustainable way of living life. These images really speak for themselves, I believe. And the child that drew this drew his life in Somalia, in Africa, and then his home in Syracuse. So even at the base, you will notice that the image of the home only exists in the picture of Syracuse. So this is what Syracuse really means to these communities. It is their home. This project was titled Towards a City of Refuge, Stories from the Comic Boys. Here's another image of a different artist. And they're in a shelter here. The waves, Somalia being on the coast, a beautiful country, but so much sadness. Graphic journalism or comic journalism and the way to publish those experiences, zines, is an experimental form of visual storytelling that merges comic art with the journalistic process. And it is, without a question, a very engaging way to reconfigure conventional notions of how we should consume news. So it incorporates journalism skills, huge, with graphic art skills, also huge in today's economy, thus providing a cross-disciplinary study and practice. This one was the image that shook me the most in the entire workshops and art. So again, my background is in art therapy. That's why that lengthy intro. Art allows participants to transcend their emotional pain, create a narrative through images of their trauma and loss, and then master the trauma, thereby releasing the painful memory from its grip in the brain and over the person's emotions. Having PTSD can be debilitating. Having depression can be debilitating. It can fully interfere with the way that we're able to engage in the work processes. And then hope at the end. This is a good home. It really is. And there it is. Another kid drew this, and there is that image of the home again. Art continues to be transformative as these processes allow for a more normal experience of life. So what's a normal experience of life? Maybe having a roof over your head, maybe having food, maybe having a dry and warm place to sleep, and having the same for the people that you love. So how does self-publishing, which is what we did with these series, help empower its authors? And why should libraries be these self-publishing centers? So here we are inside of a library, enjoying the art reception, the art opening, and the publication of the zine, which is the collection of the kids' works. And community members, they see themselves as published authors with stories to share. And they see themselves as exhibited artists who are showcasing socially relevant work. Here it is, 21st century news right inside of the library. And we also got received news coverage. Syracuse refugee boys share trauma journey to America. So all working together, we're building community resilience. Community resilience is very important since it is the sustained ability of a community to use available resources to respond to, withstand, and recover from adverse situations. And I think during the pandemic times, we have seen time and time again, talent emerge. People in sewing workshops, making masks, all kinds of moving, meaningful projects. So what exists within a public library, and can you create knowledge within a library? So actually actively generate knowledge, not just absorb somebody else's knowledge, but you, me, him, her, they, everybody can create. Can library taught skills supplement one's income? I believe, yeah. Here's an example of how teaching audio production to library patrons, such as GarageBand, helps build foundational knowledge of other industry standard software. They all bounce off of one another. You make music one day and then you're making your music video the next day. Doing video editing, graphic design, using the full range of Adobe Creative Suite software. There's not too many differences between GarageBand and Photoshop. Publishing books that were inspired by stories shared in these communities, the communities that we help build. So skills, again, spilling from one discipline into the next: audio production, sci-fi publications, airbrush techniques. There she is, our lady, Erykah Badu. Perfected all in a community space where ideas are shared and creativity is encouraged. And that was the thing that Trudi and I focused on the most. How can we share? How can we build? And how can we encourage creativity? One day, good job on your stick figure, man. The next day, hey, guy, now you have your own graphic design shop and you're still screening t-shirts. 3D design and printing for the 21st century workforce. So despite the economic struggles in certain neighborhoods, upstate New York is a bustling tech hub. If you type in Smart City Initiative Syracuse, you're gonna start to understand why this is important, why technology is important to build up the people in the community here. Drones, electronic assembly industry, jobs starting at $16 an hour. With skills, the only skills required being the ones we taught in these workshops, we're ensuring that we're ready to support Syracuse's community's transition into a more technology-oriented one. Let's be a smart city for real. And I'm not just talking about the cell phone. Creative arts come into play, 3D design and printing. We're designing these things. We're imagining these shapes in our brains and we're putting them down on paper. And we're putting them down, writing them and drawing them down into computer software. We're flipping these machines, pulling out screwdrivers, taking them apart, seeing why can't they work, using Google, using YouTube, using whatever is available, using duct tape, endless amounts of duct tape. Creative arts keep coming into play. This was a Halloween a few years ago. We came up with this and we built it. And there's the result. So in order to build, really it has to be envisioned first. Then the ideas of the final final product can be marketed and sold or used to benefit the community. So an example of this is working on masks to, let me see if I can show you guys. I'm not sure if the sound is going to work on this, but let me just take a look.
I'm Justin Bachman.
Can you hear
this
that?
mask that I'm wearing is a safety precaution, but sometimes the items that are meant to keep us safe can have unintended consequences. For Central New Yorkers that are deaf or hard of hearing, a mask like this makes lip reading impossible. Some transparent masks do exist on the market, but there's a librarian in Syracuse who wants to make access to masks like that much easier.
Not being heard or being misunderstood, it falls into the category of being undervalued to me, and I don't want that to repeat itself.
Dragana Drobnjak knows what it's like not to be understood. A refugee originally from former Yugoslavia, her current project is working to give a voice to a quieter part of her community.
It's using the resources that already belong to the community.
She's working to design masks that can be 3D printed at libraries around Syracuse. She's paired up with Chris Lynch, a local architect, and together they came up with their first design.
Ultimately, if there's not collaboration and we design something in a bubble, the chances of succeeding are pretty much zero.
With a couple of their first prototypes printed, the pair decided to go ahead and break that bubble, bringing in Manu, a deaf new American. And it's a good thing they did, because immediately she had notes.
This mask, I don't think is really good for the deaf community. I think the deaf community will love it.
Hard plastic and a relatively narrow opening were two of her biggest criticisms, but she didn't only have bad things to say.
I think this is a wonderful first step, absolutely, because you've reached out to us and you're asking a person that would utilize these masks. I think that's beautiful. I think it's a wonderful first step. And then we can work together in making the modifications necessary. And I would say that the small steps make the difference.
For Dragana and Chris, it's back to the drawing board, but this time with a better understanding of what to change, putting them one step closer to a community.
All right, sorry, preemptively escaped out of there, but it was about to be over anyway. So my point was in all of this really was we can build the skills that are necessary to resolve 21st century problems. So how is an inclusive mass a 21st century problem? I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic and a whole population has gone silent. Like that's relevant. We need that. Communities help support growth of knowledge. This is why sharing of different ideas through these interdisciplinary arts is so important. Not one person knows it all. I have to work with Manu because I have not had those experiences. And these masks are set to benefit the community. So it's a reminder each and every step along the way, we're cognizant of the community that we work in. So art obviously has a very huge role in entrepreneurship, a very hard word for my tongue to pronounce. And that is the creation of opportunity and value with intent to profit financially, socially, or otherwise through the assumption of risk and effort. So how can we build and market things that can be sold on Etsy, at the Westcott Street Cultural Fair, at tabling events during Juneteenth? How can we learn how to use modern technology? And right now, if you ask me, having a camera person and a video editor is insanely important. What is the post-production aspect of all of these Zoom recordings and virtual events that we're hosting? But teaching also, so these processes also help build social skills. They help build people means of succeeding in that socioeconomic sense. So teaching others how to add value to their own life, to be able to share something, teach something, benefit somebody's life positively, all add to inner sources of strength. Knitting, crocheting, looming for social and economic benefit. Jackie, the person in this picture, she said, I lost X amount of pounds and I made X amount of dollars using these skills. I feel great mentally. I haven't felt as good in years. Not quoting word for word, but that is what she said. A few other beautiful pictures of all the great people of Syracuse, New York. Loving, enjoying, teaching one another, benefiting mutually. A common definition of community that says is emerged as a group of people. So community is a group of people with diverse characteristics, so linked by social ties, share common perspectives, and engage in joint action in a specific setting. Here is Willietta. How do you use these skills to teach and build sustainable sources of income? Well, let's see one more example.
Okay, now look at how much you got left.
In her own words, Willietta Richards has been a part of Syracuse's North Side for a while. She knows her neighborhood's struggles all too well.
Let's start off with the poor. Being poor, that's part of my history.
Her mother and grandmother were seamstresses. When they couldn't afford to buy clothes, they made them out of curtains and bed sheets.
Way back then, that was, that was cool.
Willietta says times have changed. Kids in her neighborhood don't give the homemade stuff a chance anymore.
She told me, I don't have to learn how to do that. They sell this stuff at Walmart. But what happens when you can't afford Walmart?
That's where Dragana comes in. As a refugee herself, she knows how important learning a skill can be to success.
Right now, we are working on creating aprons. We did pillowcases last class, and then we started with the basics of sewing. So learning how to use a sewing machine on our first session.
The past few Saturdays at White Branch Library have been a pilot of the program, teaching people in the community to sew. More than just learning that new skill, it's bringing women of the North Side together.
So there's a lot of cultural exchange that's happening. North Side is very, very vibrant culturally, and I think that we're able to incorporate and integrate that kind of like the fibers in fabric.
The feeling in the room is very comfortable. Everyone's welcomed with a hug and appreciation for being there, and Dragana says that atmosphere is just as important to the program as the materials themselves.
To be hearing, older and younger women talking, to be hearing the sound of the sewing machines, of patterns rustling, of scissors cutting, I think it kind of connects to something primal.
If you ask Willietta, that connection is going to keep her neighbors coming back and ultimately lead to a stronger North Side.
They left last week. They came back with fabric and design ideas and what they want to do and how can I use this that way. I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
And I really, really love and respect Willietta so much, working tirelessly through the voting efforts, making t-shirts, sewing masks. I've been delivering supplies to her so she can continue her work, trying to, help her out in these times. Making jewelry, making gifts so we don't have to purchase things, making available free just about everything under the sun. Having summer camps that include art and hip hop music, coding, 3D printing and design. So again, what is the role the community plays in learning and growth? Can creative processes be taught in our classes or as taught in our classes, used for 21st century problem solving? Why is it important to be creative in our communities right now? Trudi, do you have some slides to follow these?
Yes, I definitely do.
Okay. I'm gonna stop screen share at this point and transfer it to you.
Okay. I'm back on. Thank you for that, Dragana. I think some of our topics will overlap because we both worked in the makerspace for some time, but we no longer work there. And but we have fond memories, clearly. And art, yes, art is a refuge for a lot of people, even people who don't realize that they're creating art. You look at the world around you and basically, someone in another program, Kiana Williams, at a program that she did for Beauchamp about art heroes, she said, you look at the world around you. You turn on the TV, there's art. You're listening to music, that's art. What is life without it? So public libraries are a wonderful place to build community, and due to its accessibility and general neutrality of place, it is successful as a third place. That is a place that is not home or work, and where many random or intentional connections can be formed. In the maker space, some of our patrons came from backgrounds that had caused them to be homeless or were dealing with mental illness that resulted in past incarceration. Some young people were sometimes just trying to figure out what to do with their lives while they were looking for a job or working through thoughts of a creative career. These heavy burdens and lack of clarity could be tempered when patrons were allowed to make art that had aspects of culture woven into it. It created community, a bond between the patrons due to the mutual exploration of the projects introduced to them, and the cultural context which infused a deeper understanding of the art they were making. So the following 3 slides are an example of this. This project is called The Art of Basquiat. It was a painting class that I led that explored the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat, the famed African-American art, New York graffiti artist and poet who grew to be a world-renowned painter during the 1970s and beyond. Patrons were introduced to aspects of his style and given the materials to create their own prototypes of Basquiat's work. We also played documentaries about his life, learning about his involvement in the New York punk scene and his struggles to defy racial stereotypes while gaining prominence in a white art world. The class culminated in several individual works, as you could see here, including a large joint Basquiat paint project, which had all the elements of his styles and had been created together by all the patrons who participated. Patrons learned how to look at art in a historical context. They learned about types of paintbrushes and uses, as well as how to paint in the style of Basquiat and how to make a collective artwork. So even though it is, someone might say, oh, it's an art class, but even something down to learning the types of brushes is not something that is always accessible to people, but is something that in a class you can get a bit more technical and teach and maybe expose some ideas that wouldn't have been thought of before. The following project is the Civil Rights Button Making Project, which takes a creative look at protests and civil rights by allowing people to create specially designed beach and branch library buttons, which highlighted the words and contributions of the historical civil rights leader, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Participants learn how to operate the very popular button maker, which is hiding behind these buttons. And they learn about their cultural history as Americans and people of color. As a group, we also watched a documentary and listened to Dr. King's speeches and had discourse about the issues, current issues today, like police brutality and the role of Dr. King's words in the world we live in today. This was one of my favorite projects and really one of the first projects that started when I came to Beauchamp. This was called Making Fabric Ornaments, West African Adinkra Art. So it's a program that attempted to connect the Southside Sankofa district, where the Beauchamp branch is located, to the West African culture that the word Sankofa originates from. So, when you're creating, you can think about how it actually links to the community that the people are actually in, and maybe, again, revealing some ideas that may not have been thought of or doesn't usually get spoken about, because sometimes people take their surroundings for granted, right? So Sankofa means to look to the past, to know where you're heading. And the symbols of Sankofa come from the Akan people from the Ashanti region of modern day Ghana. 3 classes were held, 2 at the library and 1 at the Southwest Community Center. And patrons were introduced to and chose symbols from Akan Adinkra symbols, which were then painted and glued to a pattern cut of African-inspired cloth, which you can see here on the tree. So all of these fabric ornaments were made by patrons. They were made by people who participated in the program. They were then painted with Mod Podge to seal them in. The patrons generally donated one or all of their Adinkra fabric ornaments so that we could collectively decorate a large Christmas tree. And then the tree was submitted to the Festival of Trees. That's the Everson Museum, which is a local museum downtown. And it's actually IMP's first museum. So it was submitted to a Festival of Trees where people basically just create trees of all types and they purchase them. So it's like having a decorated tree just ready to to buy. And it was able to stay it was accepted and it was able to stay in the Everson Museum during the winter. It didn't get sold, but we were glad to have it back. So having that tree out there shared the story of the Adinkra symbolism, the Sankofa district, and the works of the patrons were also able to be shared on a larger scale. So in these examples, art programs have the power to increase a patron's knowledge, expose them to new technologies, to develop their framework of history. It supports their creativity, of which can be influential in improving their self-esteem and developing focus, both are which are needed elements to move ahead in the world. The public library is also great due to its ability to elevate patrons and locals to higher positions of visibility in their community due to their creative ability. So acknowledging the skills that are already in your community and due to their continued relationship with the library, it also allows the patron or community member to grow financially. So these art classes were run by Maria Reed in 2018, winter of 2018, and then again in 2019 at Beauchamp. It was a wonderful relationship where an artist, a library goer and teacher, Maria Reed, was able to share her talent with other patrons and be compensated for it. Maria was also always interested in art. Actually, we used to see her at the Makerspace all the time. And she had experience teaching at Michael's. She ran classes called Festive Painting with Maria, which were special holiday themed paintings. Patrons had free access to paintbrushes, canvas, and art instruction, which may not have been affordable otherwise. Also trying to bring in the culture of Kwanzaa. Maria now, at this point, through her experience with the library, her teaching with the library, she's now had several art classes, which she has taught and which promoted her professionally and allowed her to continue to work on her craft. So even in transitioning times, with acknowledging someone's talent could actually still allow them to be a functioning member of society, part of a community, and allowing them to sustain themselves, which I think is a big part of alleviating the negative impacts of socioeconomic status. Boboti Wikahilu is the artistic director of Wachiva Cultural Arts in Westcott, Syracuse. And the collaboration with him came about when he sought us out to discuss hopes of expanding his dance practice into the South Side. Bobotie has performed around the world and nationally and has worked with Jimmy Buffett, as of all people, as a lead African drummer on one of his summer tours. To professional dancers, like personally, I'm from New York City, and going to a program that is free for a dancer, that's run by a master teacher and drummer, it's like the opportunity of a lifetime, and you would find rooms like that packed. So at the same time, even though people may not acknowledge some of the gems that are in Syracuse, I do think it's important for the library to try to, again, expose people to the other resources that are there, whether in culture or technology or in actual people. So being able to offer the quality of Bobotie's work to our patrons for free allowed them to meet other people, learn a new dance routine, engage in a healthy activity, and to experience togetherness, which is one of Bobotie's goals, through West African music and movement. Bobotie was also compensated for his time, which allows him to continue to do his work well and feel appreciated for the work that he does while sharing the traditions of drum and dance within the community. So this is one of my pride and joy programs that I had the opportunity to work on, and to work with these lovely young ladies who, I mean, they, I think the level of work, you know, it really, look, I'm tearing up. It was pretty amazing to see like the progress that they experienced and we all experienced as a group. So according to the 2015 to 2016 report from Pew Research, Libraries at the Crossroads, 70% of respondents out of 2004 total respondents said libraries help them to learn new technologies. 52% of all Americans say that public libraries should definitely create services or programs for local businesses and entrepreneurs. Some 85% think that coordinating more closely with local schools in providing resources to children is something libraries should definitely do. 45% say that purchasing 3D printers or other digital tools is something libraries should definitely do. And it's interesting to note that those on a lower socioeconomic scale are more likely to feel that the library should definitely invest in these tools. So the library often becomes a place where people may hear about things around them. They know 3D printers are available, but they've never seen one. For free, the library could offer that person that experience that might be an experience of their lifetime. So, so they definitely feel like we should invest in these tools. The LEAD Tech program sought to do something in all of these areas, taking place in 2019 until about March this year. It ended early due to COVID. The LEAD Tech program is a City of Syracuse neighborhood business development grant that sought to hire 2 to 3 local teens in their neighborhood library. It was also at another library named Mundy Branch, but those teens also used to come to Beauchamp. So Beauchamp was lucky enough to be able to hire people from our community. So we do refer to, I refer to the Zaria and Amina as lead techs, but they're actually, the official title is a young technology leader. And the goal was that they would receive hands-on training in computer science and STEM topics, and they would then create programs using the technology that they learned and teach those technologies to children in grades from 3 to 8. So actually this is them right now working with the Cricut machine. And the Cricut is it's a wieldly beast, but once you learn how to use it, I mean, it can do quite a lot. So lead techs Zaria Felder and Amina Collin Hardwick, they're here learning how to use Bloxels, which is actually a pixelated, it allows you to make pixelated games. So you can see right here, I was actually building a character. And we were all trying, when we learn how to do this, we just put out all of the materials and we dive in and we figure it out together, especially if I haven't already learned how to use it. And this one was one of the newer technologies. And here you can actually see some 3D doodler pens, some 3D smart pens, which are for, they allow you to draw in 3D, but these are for the younger group because 3D printing pen is kind of like a glue gun, and it can hurt. So this is like a safer way to introduce 3D printing technology earlier. And then Tavon on the right, he was also learning how to use snap circuits. So he assisted and he worked with the young technology leaders. So the wonderful thing about LEAD Tech program is that it provided funding for technology, food for program participants, and most importantly, a stipend to the young people who were locals living in the neighborhood. So they were officially working and being paid. This matters because it means that their work was fairly accessible to them by public transit, or on foot, since they weren't always able to secure a car ride. Another important thing is that it allowed us to do additional outreach right in our area. So once they took that once they learned that technology, we went out with it. And a really important part that I think gets preached over and over is outreach, community outreach. The reason why it's so important is because sometimes the people who need you the most are not going to be able to make it to your library. So you have to connect with other community groups. So you can see from the pictures that young people who are growing up in impoverished neighborhoods like the South Side could become proficient with using a variety of technologies through the exposure. They can then go on to run the programs independently, creating a community of young people who can see them handling and running technology like pros. This creates confidence amongst the entire group, as well as those who are seeing them, possibly thinking, hey, maybe I could do this one day too. So in this picture, we're looking at Amina and Zaria helping this entire group with the 3D printing pens. And let me tell you, that was the quietest group anyone has heard in a long time. They were focused. It was just like drawing, but in 3D, and they were actually quiet. All you could hear was the whirring of the pens. So engaging people with sort of technologies that they're not aware of does really stimulate the mind, because there's a challenge there, and children always want to learn and figure it out. Also in this group, you have Tavon here with and Akeem. They were the leaders of Journey to Manhood. And that was another group that we worked with, and they would actually come to our library. So they're here using the Q robots. Zaria and Amina taught patrons at the library, and one outreach group, Journey to Manhood initially, in November 19, when they started to receive their training. But by January 2020, they officially had 5 groups that they were working with on the following technologies: Doodler 3D printing pens, snap circuits, Little Bits kits, the Cricut die cutting machine, Make Block, Air Block drones, Q, Dash, and Dot robots, and the button maker. They were all able to run these programs independently. I wouldn't even have to be there. And that was what was so impressive, to see that progress from, we're just starting off, we're just interested in technology, we're interested with working with children, to becoming the instructors, being able to take on those responsibilities on their own. Although there was always staff there. And they were able to lead programs independently and were working every week. They grew from working with maybe 32 youth patrons in a month to 115 patrons in 1 month, by us going out and taking the technology to different groups and fostering that community within the Beauchamp Branch Library. And due to all the work that they were doing, they could pay their bills, they could splurge on themselves for their birthdays, they could save their money and put it towards college. It helped to relieve some of the pressures of negative socioeconomic impacts in that neighborhood, while giving them real transferable skills, soft and technical skills in many areas. One of the things that I definitely started to realize is that science is a really great way to build community. Science is a subject that I like to use to help my patrons, especially my younger patrons. Right now in our country, scientific thinking is shunned, but science is not a bad word, especially not to kids. Science has so many fun and appealing factors, and can often be like seeing someone performing magic. These projects that you're seeing all teach real concepts in an entertaining way. These Epsom salt crystals teach about supersaturation, slime making, and elephant toothpaste or foam, really the creation of foam. And I call this program Peculiar Potions. So it was a Halloween program. But they teach about chemical reactions, or basically chemistry. So this program was called Science Fun for Families, and it basically happens every 4th Thursday, because we run a STEAM program every Thursday. And the program it's for everybody. So it really is just in the title, for families to come in, kids to come in, and to participate in science projects together. This was one of my favorite programs. This is Exploring Backyard Wildlife with Nate Keefe. I actually met Nate at NYLA, my first ever NYLA conference. He now works at Tully Library. Turns out he has an awesome background with the zoo. He's worked at the zoo for many years. There are people who still remember him from the zoo, even though he's no longer working there. So he's a former Rosemont Zoo guide. Nate Keefe, he volunteered his time at Beauchamp to help show youth patrons how to be a bird watcher, because we really have a nice space that doesn't really get utilized in that way. So he taught them how to look and listen to animals through games. They were equipped with observation sheets, and we learned and studied their eating habits. We even, before the program happened, we made bird treats, and we just set it up maybe about a week or two before, so that the birds could actually start to come in by the time the program would be available. Because birds are kind of like humans in that and Nate told me this, they basically will tell another bird where the food is, like we tell each other about what are good restaurants. So after they did observations, they played the games, they learned how to see, they learned how to listen. We went outside and we studied their eating habits, and there were actually several birds out there that he was able to speak about. And then we went back inside and we made bird feeders out of milk cartons, string, and decorations, and some feathers. And we provided guests with the bird seed to take home. So science programming is a wonderful way to help children see themselves as scientists early on and to practice scientific thinking. It bypasses the difficulty of science by injecting entertainment into its educational value. It also requires some reframing. Instead of just making slime, you let the patrons know that you're doing chemistry. By broadening their focus, it helps to support concepts that they will learn or are learning in school. So these are just some of the takeaways, what questions to consider when planning programs, and what are the socioeconomic impacts, what tools are available to you, and who's in your community that can help. How do we encourage lightheartedness, resilience, and fun during difficult times? And these are also, this is information that you'll be able to see when this program is run again. But also, these are some of the takeaways. Recognize the power of outreach in your community. Bring programs to the community. Use your role to help empower people and allow them to gain practical skills. And strive to learn from your patrons. Do not just have them learn from you. So thank you for joining us in our presentation. In the end, we just want to allow our community to find satisfaction, to complete projects, and to experience fun while learning. And these projects offer patrons who are negatively impacted by socioeconomics to gain work experience, teach others, and become creators. We encourage our patrons to shift their focus and see the silver lining despite their difficulties. So thank you. We hope you enjoyed
you all. I put our contact info in the chat. Please stay in touch, LinkedIn and email. Thank you, Trudi.
Thank you.
What a great experience. And thank you so much, Christina, and everybody that came here today.
Yeah, we went a little bit off the schedule, but that's totally fine. There are some questions in the feed loop chat, so if you two would just want to pop in there and just respond to those questions in there, so we can.
Okay, cool.
But yeah,
Dragana, do you want to put on up our slide if we are gonna, the information slide?
Well, I think we have to tune out right now, right? Because we went over.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, yes.
That's why I put it in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you both.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.